And the scripture reading today is the parable of the bags of gold. And it's taken from the Lamb's translation of the Bible, Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. Now it's a bit long, but bear with me. It is just like a man who went on a journey, who called his servants and put his wealth in their charge. The one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, to each one according to his ability. And immediately he went on a journey. The one who received 5 talents then went and traded with them, and he earned 5 more. Likewise, the second one, by trading, gained 2 others. But he who received 1 went and dug in the ground and hid his Lord's money. After a long time, the Lord of those servants returned and took an accounting from them. Then the one who received 5 talents came up and offered 5 others, and he said, "My Lord, you gave me 5 talents. Behold, I have added 5 others to them." His Lord said to him, "Well done, good and reliable servant. You have been faithful over a little. I will appoint you over much. Enter into his master's joy." Then the one with the 2 talents came and said, "My Lord, you gave me 2 talents. Behold, I have added 2 others to them." His Lord said to him, "Well done, good and reliable servant. You've been faithful over a little. I will appoint you over much. Enter into his master's joy." Then the one who received 1 talent also came up, and he said, "My Lord, I knew that you are a hard man, and you reap where you did not sow, and gather where you did not scatter. So I was afraid, and I went and hid your talent in the ground. Here's the very one you gave me." And his Lord answered, saying to him, "O wicked and lazy servant, you knew me that I reap where I did not sow, and I gather where I did not scatter. You should then have put my money in the exchange, and when I returned, I would have demanded my own interest. Therefore, take away the talent from him." And he gave it to the one who has 10 talents. For him who has, it shall be given, and it shall increase to him. But he who has not, even that which he has shall be taken away from him. And the idle servant threw into the outer darkness. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And thus concludes the scripture reading, Matthew chapter 25, verses 14 through 30. The scripture got my attention because a few days ago, Reverend Pam and I were talking about our work, and we were saying how when your boss knows that you're a good worker, they just give you more and more work. It's kind of like the first servant. Those who don't do a good job, well, they get less. Hundreds of years ago in the Middle East, just like today, actually, the rich people didn't do the work themselves either. They gave it to the peasants who cultivated the land, and then they gave the crops to the landowner, and they kept a small portion for their own livelihood. So the more they harvested, the more they should be for themselves, and perhaps they could trade or they could keep more. Now let's go back to the scripture and its interpretation. As we start our journey into each incarnation, we're born with gifts and talents. And then we can choose to use them as we go through life. They can help us, and they can help others go through certain situations for healing, communications, like those who have a passion for languages, and those people who learn languages very easily. Some are born with the gift of music. They have a natural ability to hear, to memorize, and to play music. And then they develop those gifts, and then they share them with others for various purposes and make themselves rich in the entertainment industry, for example, or they just play for healing or for entertainment of others, or for both. They can train others to express their own gifts so they can in turn make others feel good. Some kids are born with certain abilities that will help them go through school and, for example, become great doctors, scientists, artists. We're all born with something special, and it's up to us to cultivate those gifts and those talents, and then work and grow them so that we can help others learn and grow in the process. I kind of see it like the expansion of the universe. We share our gifts to others and then they grow exponentially. But sometimes we don't, because we have fear. God gave us gifts, but God also gave us free will. What happens when we use our free will and then we decide that we don't want to use our hard work, or we don't want to express our talents? What happens? Well, look at work. Simply put, if you don't do your job, you lose your job. If you don't express and you don't practice your talents, then you lose the ability to do it well. Think of the gymnast who doesn't practice and loses their ability to compete, or the musician who doesn't practice and lose their dexterity. When we decline to use our gifts, maybe because we're scared or for whatever reason we feel that we're not worthy, we send a signal to the universe that, yeah, we don't want it, we don't need it, so we lose the ability to use our gift. And that's what happened to our third servant here. He was scared, so he buried his gift into the ground and he lost it all. Now, there's always more to scripture. In metaphysical terms, those gifts are the spiritual gifts that we have. Charles Fillmore interprets talents as our spiritual gifts and talents, meaning life, love, truth, substance, intelligence, faith, power, judgment, and will. All the inherent powers and faculties of men. When we bury our spiritual gifts, it means that we choose to focus on the material things only. We're afraid of growing in consciousness. We're afraid of loving. We're afraid of seeing truth. We don't have faith in God. We don't have faith in ourselves. We don't believe that there's a wisdom in ourselves. We choose to see only the material aspect of life. And that's what the third servant did. The third servants of this world buried their gifts, they buried their talents, and then they choose to not go on the spiritual path, or if they are, they choose to get off on the spiritual path at the first challenge because they find it too hard. They don't meditate, they don't practice their talents, and then they get off the path and they get off the flow of life. Because they have told life that they're not interested in growth. They're not interested in love. And all the support that the universe can bring to them just goes. They focus only on the material aspect of life. So when they face a challenge and they face something hard, anxiety settles in because they have buried their faith in the ground. They have buried their love in the ground. They have buried their connection with the universe. They have buried their connection with the divine into the ground. That's our third servant. Now, the more we express our talents and the more we express our gifts, the more we are able to grow them. And as we say, practice makes perfect. We all have a special talent in life, and more than one. We all have our own gifts, and we need to cultivate them. I know that the more I conduct and practice healing, the stronger I feel the energies in and through me. And that, for me, it's more the laying out of the hands. So the period during this COVID isolation has been quite challenging for me because I haven't done much of healing. I've done mental healing, but for me, the connection, I feel it with my hands. And as I'm telling you, I open my hand here and I feel the connection. So as I'm doing this, enjoy the healing that's coming your way. So during the period of COVID isolation, I didn't do much of healing. And meditation felt awkward too. So when a challenge or difficulty came knocking at my door, things got really tough. I had to reset the clock and I had to get back into the flow. And it was hard work. Just like the gymnast, I had lost my dexterity. Now, one more angle to this. Our Master God, the universe, has a big pot of gold that we're entrusted with, an infinite amount of love that is being shared with each one of us. What do we do with it? Do we share it, or do we make it grow and prosper? Or do we bury it into the ground? Do we close our hearts because we've been hurt before and we're afraid of being hurt again? Or do we open our hearts and let the love freely flow in and out? It grows, it grows, it grows, and it prospers. And then we're in the flow of life. And then the more love comes our way. But then when we close our hearts and we don't let the love in and out freely, we render ourselves unable to feel the love of God. We're not in the flow. And we're unable to feel the presence of God in everything that we do, in everything that we are. And then we contract more and more and more. We live with anxiety about this and about that because we don't feel the presence of God within us, because we don't have faith. And then when we don't have faith, we have fear, and then more fear. Sometimes we think that we're unable to do something. We get scared and then we're going to fail. So we feel that we have too much on our plate, for example, and then we forget the presence of God that is within us. We forget that big pot of gold and of life that's inside of us. And that pot of gold of love, it can make us succeed, but we have to have faith. And honestly, in my opinion, faith, and that means knowing in all aspects of your being that the divine presence is there always to support you because it's part of you. It is the most important faculty. To me, the most important faculty is faith. Because with faith, we have everything. Because with faith, you have love, you have life. Because you know that is all inside of you. When we use our faith that God is with us in everything that we do, we succeed. Now, one more little story before I close. For some people, our gifts touch just a handful of people. And then for others, they affect a vast amount of people, thousands, millions, even billions. Now, I'm going to ask you, just take a moment to think about who I'm thinking of, who has affected and continues to impact the lives of millions or billions of people. It was in the news recently. I'm talking about Bill Gates, the founder of Microsoft. Now, in high school, he probably wasn't the most popular guy, at least not on the social scene, right? He liked computers, and perhaps he was a bit different than his peers. And perhaps he might have been bothered by it, who knows? But he had a gift, he had a passion, and regardless of what might have happened around him on the social scene, he used his free will and he grew his gift, his talent. Look at what he has accomplished. Now, let's first look at Microsoft. With Microsoft, he's had an impact on the entire planet. He became the richest man in the world, and he stayed there for quite a long time, thanks to his gift of nerdiness and his perseverance and his faith that he could succeed. Now, one day, Bill Gates realized that materially, he had it all, the richest man in the world. Where do you go from there? Do you just stop, or do you keep going? Many in his position, bury their money. They just keep it for themselves. He didn't. He did not bury his gift. He did not bury his faculty of love, his hope in his heart. And now he's known as a philanthropist. He's again one of the most influential men in the world. He decided, well, he and his wife decided to share, or ex-wife, I don't know where they stand. He decided to share a big chunk of what he had, and they created the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Yeah. Look at what you heard in the media, perhaps, you know, as a man, not perfect, perhaps not for what society expects from men. But that's not the point here. Think of the billions of dollars that he has channeled and will continue to channel, and for his charity. Think of the fundraising efforts that he's done to help the world overcome inequality and provide millions of vaccines to the poor. And I'm not talking only about COVID vaccines. I'm talking about supporting the poor. He raised the bar for the mega rich. Now, think about it. What if 15-year-old, or let's just say 25-year-old, or even 40-year-old Bill Gates had said, "Nah, I'm done. Too hard. I give up." Would have been different. I don't know if we would have conducted this meeting online. Now, just a few days ago, he pledged to give all of his wealth to the foundation, and then he would eventually no longer be the richest man, or one of the richest men in the world. Now it doesn't matter to him anymore, because he's in the flow of life. For him, giving is more important. And then what he wrote next on his tweet tells you where he's in consciousness. He wrote, "I have an obligation to return my resources to society in ways that have the greatest impact for reducing suffering and improving lives. And I hope others in position of great wealth and privilege will step up in this moment too." Jeff Bezos, you hear that? Murdoch, you hear that? We're all born with our gifts, and we all face challenges. And perhaps we shy away from our gifts. We're all born with an immense pot of gold, an immense amount of love that's available to us. And it's up to us to cultivate it and make it grow. So I'm going to ask you something. What's your gift? What is the gift that you have that you can share to uplift others? What have you done with it? What are you going to, how are you going to set your fears aside? Or are you going to throw them in the fire? Are you going to open your heart and let the love and the resources of God and of life flow freely in and out and expand your consciousness? Are you going to be like the third servant in the parable and bury your talents? Or the first? Open your hearts and have faith. Namaste.